I recently joined a Facebook group, and being in real estate, we're all part of some group within real estate. And I was told to add value to the group. Okay, by adding value into the group, I would be building up equity, like time, adding value to the group. And so at some point, when I need something from somebody within the group, I would have had built up all that equity within the group, right? And so then it would be easier to go to that group to make an ask, right? So like what I just did with you guys a couple of slides ago about asking for that favor of saying, hey, you know what, if I ever come across in a certain way, please let me know, right? Well, prior to that, I've already done so many presentations with you guys that you guys know who I am, right? And so it's very easy for me to make that ask of you guys, right? And so part of this Facebook group is they said, Hung, you know what, you need to put in time, answer questions, be a part of the community, put equity into the group. And then when you need a favor in the future, you're able to make that ask without people being offended by it, right? So that is a form of equity. Why is equity important? Okay, so when I graduated from university, I basically moved every 2 years. Okay, that was because I had a new job every 2 years. And every single time I moved, I would phone up my friends. I'll be like, hey, I have to move. Can you come over and help me move? And as you can imagine, after 15 years, the amount of friends that I could call on to do this was getting smaller and smaller and smaller by the time, right? Okay. So the reason why equity is important is because you use it down the road. Like you build up your equity now and you use it, you leverage it down the road. That's why it's so important. Okay. And I share that moving story with you because that's what I was leveraging my friendships, right? But, of course, after a while, I didn't have to do that because the companies would pay for the movers to come to my house. Okay. So you do have to balance that out. Okay. So, having your friends move for you, it is very relevant to the topic of equity. Okay, so it's friendship equity. Okay, so I want to point out though too that when you work in real estate and you need to move because of real estate, of these opportunities, that move is potentially a tax deductible expense. So you just want to keep that in mind. Okay, so now we're going to go into the why. So why are we even talking about equity? Like, why is it important? Okay, so one reason is that it does help you build up your wealth, right? And your equity, if organized properly, should be increasing even if you're sleeping. It's very passive, supposedly. Okay, so for example, the houses in Vancouver or Toronto, those are appreciating year over year. And so as you're sleeping, the house value is going up day after day after day, right? And so that is building your wealth. Okay, so that's your equity. Okay, now there is such a thing as negative equity, and that's what we spoke about in the case of Fort Mac. Okay, so just be cognizant that yes, there could be negative and positive equity, and depending on where you're sitting, okay, you always want positive equity. Okay, another reason why equity is good and important is that it allows you to leverage other people's skills that they bring to the table or other benefits that other people bring to the table. Okay, so if you are, if you've got the capital, right, and you don't have a lot of time, then you could leverage somebody who's got the sweat equity to put into an opportunity. So that's how you'll be leveraging other people's times. And so that's forming the partnerships. And as we talked about, the stakeholder partnerships, right? So, and another reason why equity is super important, okay, and this is one of the things that I love about equity, is that it's tax-free, meaning that, okay, if you work for, so when I was working as an engineer, I would work, get my pay, and I would notice that the government had already taken X amount off for the taxes. Okay, well, when you refinance your house and you pull out that equity, that is completely tax-free. Okay, that means that it's post-tax dollars in your pocket right there, and you don't have to declare it on your statements. You don't have to tell the government that hey, I refinanced and I pulled out, 250,000, right? So that is one of the amazing things about equity that nobody told me about until I was like into the weeds of refinancing, and I pulled out equity and I'm like, hey, what do I do with this money now? And it was like, oh, I can just do private lending with it. I can do other investments with it. I don't have to pay any taxes on this dollar, right? So equity is one of the ways that you can save 30 cents on the dollar. The reason why I like this equity is because that's one of the ways I fund our living style, right? It allows us to live more because I don't have to work at a 9-to-5 anymore, okay? So equity is the appreciation, which is also tax-free. Just a couple of tips. You want to make sure that you consider your tax implications on your equity. So even though I mentioned that a lot of it is tax-free, you do want to make sure that you understand it because it's different between multifamily equity versus single family equity. It's not the same. Okay, and the equity that you get from your shareholders is different, and the equity that you get from your stocks, that's different too. Okay, so you want to talk to your accountant as to what the tax implications are for all those different types of equity. Okay. Ideally, you want your equity to be passive, meaning that it's growing all the time for you while you're sleeping, so that you don't have to worry about making it and then just tapping into that when you need it to make other investments. Okay, and then of course, the last question, where do you have underutilized equity? Okay, this was a question that I asked myself years and years ago, and it made me be very creative on one, how to access my equity, and then what to do with it. And once I realized, oh my God, I can do private lending with this, oh my God, it was like a game changer for me in terms of how I was financing my lifestyle. Okay, one last joke. I'd like to offer you equity, 30% of zero, which is a big fat zero.